Are you looking for a quick, easy, and efficient way to deploy patch management through macOS? Then you need to check out App Auto Patch. Before we go over App Auto Patcher, first we need to cover the two tools that it relies on for functionality. There's SwiftDialog and Installomator. I'm going to cover SwiftDialog first. So what is SwiftDialog? Just for a real quick explanation, SwiftDialog is a notification or dialog window utility that's powered by the Swift language. It's just what App Auto Patcher uses to display all of its notifications in Windows. So let's go ahead and head on over to an explanation of Installomator. So, what is Installomator? Installomator is a shell script that can install applications and update applications. It relies on the Installomator labels to determine things like the application title, the bundle identifier, how to determine what the latest version of the application is if it's already installed, and where to source the download from. Additionally, there are some Installomator options that I want to go over real quick as they're very important for App Auto Patcher setup. So let's go over to the configuration and variables. The first one we're going to cover is blocking process actions. So this basically just says there's a process blocking Installomator from updating or installing an application. How is it going to proceed? I have mine set to kill. I have it set to kill because App Auto Patcher already prompts the user to continue with updates. So if I send another prompt to the user, this could get confusing and add unnecessary overhead. So let's continue on to the next option, and that is notification or notify. So on this page, it says success is the default option set. However, an App Auto Patch is actually set to silent, which is what we want because App Auto Patch handles all the notifications anyway. Moving on to the last one is App Store apps handling. This just determines if you want to ignore apps installed from the App Store or not. I have mine set to no because App Auto Patcher is the only way we deploy updates to applications, so I do want to update apps from the App Store. Now let's move on to App Auto Patcher. So let's talk user experience. I've got an article pulled up here from the Jamf Nation User Conference of last year that showed off App Auto Patcher. So first off, we have fully interactive. This is going to show the analyzation of the system, discovering what apps are installed, and then also roll into the patch workflow. Below here we have the deferral workflow, so this obviously shows you the defer, continue, and then how much time you have left to choose one of those options. Then we have the silent discovery, full interactive patching. This allows the user to interact with the patching, but they don't see the discovery. This is what I currently roll out. Lastly, there's completely silent. So they're not going to see anything. It's just going to patch and that'll be it. It'll be completely in the background. So let's head on over to the labels section of App Auto Patch. So going over how App Auto Patcher handles Installomator labels, it basically just divvies them up into three separate categories. Those three separate categories are required, ignored, and optional. For required, this basically just says this label is going to be installed on a machine, whether it has it or not, or even if it's been deleted previously, it's just going to install it. For ignored, that means that these labels are specifically going to be ignored and will not be updated. However, it is important to note that if the label is in the required category or optional category, that is going to have priority over the ignored label category. For the optional label category, this is just going to scan the computer for apps that it has and then update them accordingly. So now let's move on to the deferral workflow settings. Now on to the deferral options. So we're going to talk about the days until reset and patch week start day. Everything else in this section will not be covered. So if you want to know more about it, you are more than free to read it on your own. The link to this page and the wiki itself will be in the description. So days until reset. This says, okay, the patching process has completed. How many days must pass until that patching process flag is reset to false? So if we set it to 2, then when the patching process completes, it waits 2 days, then it resets, and it patches again, and then it loops. Now for patch week start day, this is going to initiate a weekly schedule. I would recommend If you want your patches to happen once a week, to set days until reset to 7 and patch week start day to whatever day you want the patching to occur on. If you don't set days until reset to 7, it can get a bit wonky and you're probably going to get unexpected behavior than what you think is going to happen. To give you an example, if you have a patch week start day set to Tuesday, for example, and days until reset to 2, on Tuesday, when the patching process completes, it will wait 2 days, so until Friday, and then the patching process will run every single day until it gets to Tuesday again. So I highly recommend you set days until reset to 7 for weekly patching. Moving on to the deferral configuration, there's max deferral. This is how many times a user can hit defer before they're forced to either run out the timer or hit continue. There's the deferral timer. This just gives a timer of how much time a user has before hitting defer or continue. Then there's deferral timer action. So this dictates what happens when the timer runs out. If a user is out of deferrals, it will automatically continue. But if they're not deferrals, then you can either set it to defer or continue. Now I'm going to touch on a couple of options in the script itself. There's ignore apps in home folder. So this will ignore apps found in the /users directory. Now, in my use case, a user had a VM with an app installed inside of the VM, and it was detected by Installomator. Installmator's discovery is very aggressive. Now, after that, it installed it onto his actual OS instance outside of the VM, which is not desired behavior and is not something I want. So I have enabled apps in home folder, or ignore apps in home folder, to true. Lastly is app title. This is just going to change the window title of when App Auto Patcher appears, so you can customize it to be more environment friendly. So with all of that explanation out of the way, now let's figure out how to deploy this to Jamf Pro. Okay, so let's finally deploy this thing to Jamf Pro. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to grab the shell script, go ahead and copy that. We're going to want to head over to Jamf Pro. We're going to want to go to Settings, Scripts. Then we're going to want to click New. Go ahead and name this whatever you want. I'm going to name it App Auto Patcher. Put it in a category if you want. Then head over to the Script tab and paste it in there. So at this point is when you want to modify the settings that you won't be able to modify through the parameters through a Jamf Pro policy, which I will be talking about in just a moment. So let's scroll down thing here. Now the main things we do want to configure are deferral timers, what happens when the deferral timer runs out, how many days until reset does the patch policy take, and then the patch week start day if you want to set that up. Additionally, we want to look for the ignore apps in home folder. I'm going to set this to true. And then app title. So you can change this to whatever you want. Just make this YouTube video, why not? Okay, now with all that done, if there's nothing else you want to configure, let's go ahead and go to options. Now for these, I would highly recommend you do this. This is completely optional and will not impact any kind of functionality of this, but it makes it a lot easier when you're configuring. So what you're going to do is you'll head over to this page. It's in the App Auto Patch Wiki in the Jamf Pro deployment section. You'll just scroll down and it'll have all the parameter labels. Now I'm not going to do this because I already have a script set up for this, so it doesn't really matter, but I would recommend you pause the video or go to this page and put them in and then come back once you've completed that. So I've already got a policy for this, or a script for this in Jamf Pro, so I'm just going to use that one instead of sitting here and copying those all over. So let's go to Computers, Policies, let's click New. Let's name this. I'm going to name this App Auto Patch Test. And then I'm going to set this to recurring check-in, ongoing frequency. Now, this is important, and it really depends on how you want this to behave. If you want this to have a deferral workflow and you only want it to run once a day, like you only want it to bug your users once a day, and if they hit defer that day, then it will run the next day. You would want to change this to once every day. And then if you only want users to, like, this is just basically setting the time in between of when does App Auto Patcher pop up again after being deferred. So this doesn't have a launch daemon or anything, so it's completely controlled through the Jamf Pro policy scheduling settings. Okay, now if you have a deferral workflow set up and you want this to run every hour, depends on your recurring check-in time. That has a range of 15, 30, 45, and an hour, I believe. You would have to go through that. I'm just going to set this to recurring check-in with an ongoing frequency just for testing purposes. So let's go ahead and add the script. I have mine here, App Auto Patcher. As you can see, I have my parameter values labels all inserted here. So I'm going to do silent discovery. Let's just do ignored. I'm going to put a wildcard here. For required, let's just do Notion. And for optional, I have Spotify installed and I have Discord installed. So just something like that. It is important to note these labels are space separated. Now for Installomator options, I'm going to input blocking process action equal kill, just so that way once these are being updated, they're going to kill the process and move on. They will reopen them, which is also something you can turn off, but by default the apps do reopen after being updated. For deferral, I'm not going to enact the deferral workflow just for this video, so that way we can see it up and running as quickly as possible. Now that's just about it. For scope, I'm going to add myself. So here I am in a computer group. I'm going to hit save. Now I'm going to pull up terminal and I'm going to run a sudo jamf policy, which will enact policies triggered by check-in. Now, I do want to warn you, if you are testing this, App Auto Patcher takes anywhere from like 3 to 10 minutes for it to get up and running in silent analyzation, fully patch interactive mode. Now, if you have analyzation mode enabled, you'll pretty much see it immediately. But I'm going to go ahead and cut, and I'll come back once App Auto Patcher pops up. Okay, in about 2 to 3 minutes later, it was actually a bit quicker than I expected. Here we have Unicorn App Updater, as I have titled it. Here we have the self-service icon being displayed, and then the list of apps that have updates available, possibly. So this list is actually generated. It is just a list of applications that are in the labels parameter. It doesn't mean they have updates. It just means that they have been detected as installed or required installations. Now, if an application does not have an update, it'll say latest version already installed and then proceed on to the next application, which it is a bit annoying, but it's unfortunately how it works. And it does work really well. So if you have any questions about App Auto Patcher, there is the Mac Admins Slack channel with the App Auto Patcher channel in it. And then you can also leave a YouTube comment. I'm more than happy to help. I'm not a developer or contributor to this project whatsoever. I'm just a rogue guy trying to make it easier to set up and figure out. So, thanks for watching.